Late this morning, keeping in our tradition of our weekly podcast. We may be taking off next week, being as the Thanksgiving holiday.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure Shane will appreciate that. Maybe we won't, but
I'll be here. So either way,
yeah. So maybe we'll be here. So maybe you guys can join us all. But welcome, world. Shane and I were talking this morning. He did a post this week, from New Belgian CEO. If you're not willing to shift,
you're gonna
you
die.
know you're going to die, right? And so we want to talk about that and across brands in general. I've been talking about this for weeks. I think oftentimes in this industry we're all talking to ourselves.
Yep.
We don't really keep the consumer in mind. But Shane, you posted this thing on LinkedIn this week. Why did you post it? What are you thinking?
I've talked to a couple brands over the past month who, and I don't think there's no fault, but
Yeah.
it's so easy, like you said, you get in this echo chamber within the industry where everybody's talking to themselves, talking to each other, and it's easy to lose sight of how the consumer's evolving, what they're looking for. I've honestly seen it with bars and restaurants too. The amount of bars and restaurants in cities that don't have an NA option is wild. And I think just so you're running a business, you're running whether it's a restaurant, a brand, and you get so involved in the day to day of that you just lose sight of how the market's evolving and how the consumers demands are evolving. And I think it's happening so quickly now that it's easy to get behind.
Yeah, I think they get like a playbook, right?
Mhm.
And they rinse and repeat that playbook. Be it a restaurant, I have a menu. This menu is working for me. This is how I know what I need to cook for the day. I know what type of drinks people are purchasing off my bar. Or I have this, annual business plan, which you always talk about, and this worked every year. So why wouldn't it work again, right?
Yeah, and it's your comfort zone. It's
Yeah.
for anybody in any area of life. It's scary to get outside of your comfort zone. You know what's worked, so to decide to do something different that hasn't isn't proven to work is scary. But what's working 5 years ago for a lot of brands in general just isn't going to work moving forward.
Yeah, it's when you use the word, adapt or die, or I usually come back with people and I'll say innovate or die, right?
Yeah,
You certainly can over innovate, and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you can have too many options. You've talked about that as well. But yeah, looking at the market, and you talked about restaurants is a great example. So there's a consumer out there that wants options other than Bev Alc, right?
Yeah.
But I'm a Bev Alc. I'm New Belgian, right? And I'm coming out with all these alcohol type of beers, or I'm Diageo and I have all this alcohol and I don't have options. I'm a restaurant and I'm just offering alcohol, but yet there's this whole consumer out there that wants something else. So you're right. What would you recommend? Maybe starting with, I guess, a craft brewer. What should they consider?
Well, it's something that should be authentic with your brand, with who you are, who you speak to. Um, but I've told people this. There's always the option to start side brands or separate brands because you
Yeah.
don't want to do something that's inauthentic. So if you're a craft brewer that's known for great IPAs and sours, and you come out with a I don't know an NA light lager, it may just not align with that messaging. But you can
Yeah.
start it as a separate brand. I think again, New Belgium, they came up with Fat Tire, and now they've got the Voodoo Ranger series that, while it's still under the New Belgium umbrella, it's
Hmm.
basically its own separate brand that acts independently in terms of its marketing and messaging. And I think that's effective for remaining authentic, and it allows you not to be pigeonholed. Because like I said, a lot of these brands get stuck in an echo chamber where it's like, what do we want to drink? We like lagers and farmhouse saisons, and like to get outside and like what do consumers want, just to do it in an authentic way.
Yeah, and every brand has a life cycle, and
Yeah.
everything's cyclical too. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of double talking. So brands will go through their life cycle, and then they'll go like this, and they'll go down, right? Pabst Blue Ribbon's a prime example. It went like this, and went down, and all of a sudden became cool again.
Right.
Smirnoff is another brand that, it was like the brand that, my dad drank, and then it went down. But then they came out with an RTD, and all of a sudden Smirnoff became popular again. So I think you definitely have to adapt, and you have to look at the market and see what it is. So for today, and what the market today is, it seems to be there's a cataclysmic change
Yeah.
that's happened, and people are like, okay, my business is soft. I think I talked about this a couple weeks ago, and sorry for my friends at Brown-Forman. I love them to death. I'm a shareholder and the whole bit. Spent 10 years with them, but their business, their stock is trading in, pretty close to an all-time low because whiskey sales are down.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not here to,
No.
tell you what the market is going to be, whatever. But Brown-Forman is going to have to reinvent themselves a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's so key to do that because, again, I don't work with New Belgium, but they're such a great example.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, when I was a kid, my dad would have Fat Tire in the fridge, and it was something special. And that, what they were 20 years ago with just Fat Tire is not who they are now. And if they would have just sat around and said, well, Fat Tire's worked, it's going to continue to work, they would not be nearly what they are today. And you look, Brewbound always does their great reporting with what's coming up for the year, and they're New Belgium's looking to release a drink that has electrolytes and salt, and it's just they have to continue to adapt with the consumer because they wouldn't be where they are today if they were just Fat Tire still.
Yeah, it was funny you say that. I know a little brand called Nebula 9. Nebula 9 is an RTD, 9% alcohol by volume, I believe, or whatever, but it has apple cider vinegar in it. Yeah. Right. So it has alcohol in it, but it also has a better for you component with that. So if I'm drinking this RTD, I'm getting some benefit, from it, even though there's some alcohol in it. So that seems it seems that there's a shift towards that, where there's these better for you beverages over here and these alcohol beverages here. Somewhere they're kind of coming in the middle because you have these beverages, hemp beverages, Delta 9. It seems like everybody's looking for a solution somewhere in the middle. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it's just the wellness trend. I mean, like I said, even on the restaurant side, I was out last night for dinner, and I mean, I drink, but just didn't feel like drinking last night. And I was actually a local brewery, but I was like, what do you guys have that's not alcoholic? I don't even need an NA beer, just anything. And I ended up with a ginger beer, which is fine, but it was like ginger beer or Coke.
Yeah.
Can we get something else? I mean, I'll take a sparkling liquid death. I mean, just anything. Just because people are looking, I still drink beer. I still drink bourbon, but sometimes there's just different occasions where I want something else. So how can you speak to that consumer who's looking for something on a different occasion? It doesn't mean that I'm not going to drink Buffalo Trace or Redbreast or, beer too. There's certain occasions where I want something else now. And how do you cater to that consumer?
Yeah, over the course of the evening, you might start out with, whiskey and Coke, and then you move into like an NA beer. So if you have those options, you can actually meet the demand. Or depending on the occasion, like I'm going to the Gophers Penn State game today, Shane.
Kind of jealous.
Yeah, I thought of you, and my buddy Brad said, "Hey, do you want to go to the Gopher Penn State game?" Super excited, but he's like, "Yeah, we're going to get a case of beer and we're going to grill brats and burgers." And I'm like, "Well, I've been getting over COVID, full transparency, the last few weeks, as you know, and so the last thing I want to do is start putting alcohol into my body because I'm healing. So I'm going to go get NA beer." And I was probably going to get, I like Heineken and I like Guinness.
Good.
So I'm probably going to get those NA beers, some of my favorites. But a lot of times you go to these restaurants and they're not there, or you have your favorite brewery that you like, but they don't have an option for you. Because if I have a badge of honor and name a brand, Shane, name a craft beer that you love to drink.
I mean, it's a local, but I was at Cinderlands last night here in Pittsburgh. Great beer.
Yeah, so does Cinderlands have an NA option for Cinderlands? The same thing?
They have hop water. They were out of it last night. I actually like the hop water. It's kind of like a hop flavored sparkling water. It's pretty good. They happened not to have it last night. Usually they're a pretty good go-to for that. The ginger beer was fine, but the amount of just not even breweries too, but bars and restaurants you go to, and like, what are your NA options? And it's like, they look at you like a leper. Now the whole restaurant's like staring at you,
Yeah, but this is what's brilliant about Heineken.
It's really good, by the way. Heineken Zero.
But you put the regular and the zero?
Yeah.
So I have an NA option and I can get the same like great taste, experience, and still have my Heineken in my hand, my badge. That's what I was saying. So, why not have like, the brand you just mentioned that they sell that's, I don't know, dark L, whatever you want to call it. But why can't they have an NA option in that available depending on the occasion? Hey, so I'll be full transparent. Sometimes I just want to chill out and get a little bit of a buzz, and the whole bit. I enjoy that. But
Yeah.
sometimes I don't.
Well, and if you go to a dinner for 2 or 3 hours, I mean, they're in the past, you can have 5 or 6 drinks without thinking about it. Now you got to Uber. Now you're going to feel like shit the next day. Where if you just have a beer or two or a whiskey or two and then switch
Yeah.
to NA, I like what Heineken's done with just their branding on the zero. It looks like their normal beer products. It tastes like their normal beer products. It's on brand. And I think their ad campaign that they have with Max Verstappen is great. It speaks to some kind of aspirational lifestyle or attaches
Mhm.
some kind of great energy to it, which I mean, I like the Heineken Zero. I've
Yeah.
never been a big Heineken drinker, but the Zero is really good.
Yeah. 2 years ago, I didn't go this year to MBWA. Did you go to MBWA this year?
I did
But
not.
two
I'm
years
thinking
ago, I
about
went to MBWA, but I went to the Heineken booth, and they were like on the cutting edge of promoting. Actually, the Diageo folks, Guinness, they were promoting their Guinness as well. But yeah, but that's an example where they really did innovate. They adapted. They saw the mark. They saw kind of the leading indicators
yeah.
before everybody else. To actually take advantage of the market, because I'm not sure where this thing's going to go, but it seems to be, in an NA space, this most beer is successful. I think wine is trying to still try to get it right. Um, I've had some NA wines, and there's some really good ones out there, and there's a lot of good ones coming in from Europe, soon to be. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the tariffs,
Yeah.
with the wines coming out of Europe, but again, there are people that have, like New Belgium and others that have adapted. Kind of going back into I guess the hospitality side of it. Why do you think a lot of restaurants, bars haven't like met the moment?
I don't know. It's been about a year since I got out of distribution almost, and it was starting to take off the NA thing then. We had a couple options that weren't great. I'll be honest, we passed on Athletic like 5 or 6 years ago. I did.
Yeah, we talked about that, right?
I
It's
don't
like,
know if they would have signed with us, but they reached out and I was like, this who would drink NA beer?
yeah,
But at that point, I mean, it was still silly, but like the market's going up.
yeah,
People are looking for growth in the beverage industry. Why wouldn't you get into that space? But on the hospitality side, I don't know. I mean, just to have one or two options, what's the hurt? And there's so many, you're starting to get to the point where there's a lot of quality options in terms of products.
yeah.
Why, I don't know. Why wouldn't you put it on the menu? What's the hurt? I'll be honest, if a Heineken Zero is $6, I don't care. I still pay for it. You can still make margin.
When's the last time you walked into like a craft establishment and looked at a back bar?
I do it, but I think I put it like a Instagram up last night. I just do it because I think I'm in the industry. I get in the habit of it. It's like force a habit.
Yeah. So have you ever walked into like a big whiskey bar and you'll see the back?
Yeah.
I think Brian Rosen posted. Brian,
Yeah.
I'm giving you some free advertising again.
Yeah.
You're always on my mind because somehow you always come first up in my feed. But he did a post. I talked about it last week, and he showed all these hundreds and hundreds of whiskeys. And you know what happens with all those hundreds and hundreds of whiskeys?
They just blend together.
They just blend together and nothing happens. No one ever orders anything and it just sits there. So can you imagine the type of dollars they have tied up in that inventory? I'm not saying take all the whiskeys off the back bar, people. I sell whiskey for a living and bourbon and rye and really enjoy it. What I am saying is if you're going to put it back there, make sure you activate it. But also, if it's not being activated, make some rooms for some NA options and promote it.
So I read a stat this week. This is a beer stat, but 65% of taps in bars are craft beer taps, but they only make up 39% of the volume. So you've got a lot of taps that aren't really driving much sales or volume. Get rid of a couple of them. If you have 5 IPAs instead of 7, nobody's going to care anymore.
Yeah.
Put 2 NA options on or anything else really, and you'll bring in more consumers than you'd ever lose by getting rid of two IPAs.
Yeah, but wait, Shane. I got some really cool coasters, and they paid for the bar tap, and they're doing some wait staff training for
I
my
mean, that's all
staff.
good, but like, and this speaks to, we get back to like how you need to adapt, because if you're just doing IPAs, you've got to have a really strong brand identity, like a Bell's Two Hearted or Stone IPA, to stand out, because otherwise you're just muddling together in that tap list. So
Yeah,
you either got to have a really strong brand identity that you're you know investing to scale, or you've got to have something that's new and different. Just, it's such an easier path to success to say, I've got an NA sour, I've got an NA hazy IPA. Because you can walk into bars right now, I'm sure, and say, you've got 7 hazy IPAs on tap. Take one of them off, put an NA on. You're only going to have a value add. You're only going to gain customers. You're not going to lose any. As opposed to going in and saying, I've got a hazy IPA. There's 1,000 of them.
yeah. I think definitely everybody, starting with the supplier to the distributor to the customer, that everybody needs to be aware. Even the distributors, actually, I'm not going to say the distributor, but they got back to me. I was connecting a friend for a brand. He got back to me and said, "Hey, we're not looking at any options till the first of the year."
Well, that's dry January.
Yeah, exactly. So I literally connected my friend, this great brand, well financed, behind the brand. I mean, they got on Walmart's marketplace, in which only 5% of the brands ever get on Walmart's
Yeah.
marketplace. Yeah, so they totally missed the mark. Dry January. So you literally could get this brand in here ready to go and be part of Dry January.
I mean, I know there's some nuance to each situation, but if you're a distributor not looking at NA at this point, you know, you're bordering on idiocy. I mean, it's just, it doesn't have to be all of your portfolio, but you're looking for growth. If it's 15% of your portfolio 5 years from now, it's 15% that you won't have without it.
It's the comment you just made, athletic. And we talked about this weeks ago. We just not being open and aware,
Yeah.
right? So we're talking, this ties in what we're talking about this morning, is if I'm making all these brands that are all alcohol laced, but I'm not giving other options from hemp based to non NA, whatever, 5 years from now, just like you said, I'm like, boy, I wish I would have done that.
And even if athletic wouldn't have taken off, if I would go back to myself 5 years ago and give advice, I would say, you've got a great craft portfolio. There's only so much that you're going to eat into your competition. Even if you continue to grow this craft portfolio, you
Yeah.
got to take some shots, and whether it's NA or just whatever it was, just take some shots to do something different. Doesn't mean you have to change your core business, but just to add to it. Even if, I mean, athletic took off, but even if
Yeah.
you wouldn't have hit big like that, why not?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Especially
funny.
trying to drive growth.
Yeah, so this morning, I don't know if you saw this, but I did a post this morning, and it's interesting. It does tie into this. So it was with Warren Buffett. You know who Warren Buffett
Oh
is?
yeah, I did see this. The best one.
Yeah. So I start with life's like the stock market. It's all about smart investing,
Yeah.
right? So, and when I think about the stock market, you want to have more wins and losses, right?
Yeah.
So Warren talks about it. He said in 1942, I think it was, I actually spent $114.75 on these two stocks. And if I would have invested in the stock market, my dividends, nothing else, just reinvest my dividends in the S&P 500, what do you think the value of the $114 would be in today's dollars?
Be like millions, I would think.
It was $400,000, but that's $114, $400,000, right? And he's like, don't get me wrong, because you just said it. You're going to have winners and losers. You kind of said it that way.
Yeah,
but
right.
So why wouldn't you, is the question, come up with different alternative brands? And that's what I think about. Again, I go back to Heineken. By having an NA option for their Heineken core brand, it did nothing but actually help their core brand and help their business.
Well, and I'm sure there are some established brands that are losing just a little bit of business from, I don't know, Budweiser, Miller Lite, that have stopped drinking or don't drink as often and go to NA. Why
Hmm.
wouldn't you just have an NA option so that if nothing else, you don't bleed? Because I'm
Yeah.
sure, I haven't seen the numbers, but I'm sure that Heineken has stolen some form of market share with
Oh,
their
well, yeah, they're
zero.
the number one brewer in the world, man.
Right, but I'm saying like they've probably added to that by like if I drink Bud Heavies and I've stopped doing that as much and I go to the bar and there's Heineken Zero, I'm just going to have that even 20% of the time. It's something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, certainly these brewers and distillers, there's some brilliant people, and I know they're talking about this.
I mean,
And
I think I'm speaking more with innovation to like the small and mid size because they're more agile. They can release a product 3 months from now. It's a
yeah,
tougher life cycle at a large organization.
yeah, yeah. But these small guys, if you want to, if you do want to survive,
Why not? If you put out an NA sour lager and it doesn't work, who cares?
well, we talked about this weeks ago. Many craft breweries they've become repackers.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because shoot, it was something like not more than 52 or 55% of current brewing production is spoken for. So almost half the brewing production in this country is sitting empty. And I like the idea of contract brewing or being a repacker.
Mhm.
It's going to be interesting to see. Somebody needs to have beer to sell, not just repack, right? Like you need someone that needs the beer to be brewed to sell. Um,
So the reason I said that is, and I won't mention, just to be fair to some of the local craft breweries I know about that are doing it, but and I think they're doing this, but come up with your own brands, right? Of your doing it for other brands, bring in your own brands within it and build it out. Because look,
oh
I had an owner of a very well-known craft brewery said to me that they had to reinvent themselves
yeah,
through actually being contract brewing and co-packing the whole bit. Matter of fact, they opened up another second brewery just to do that work, and I gotta believe that's probably the majority of their business now and their model. And they also are building their own brands within that because the guy is innovative enough and being like he's like futuristic. He's like, hey, I can see what's coming to save my company because he obviously probably wants to be generational wealth for his family
yeah.
and what he's doing. But yeah, it is if you're not adapting, and when you posted that, by the way, or maybe it just came to my mind. Sorry, I'm looking away. I'm thinking about it. But have you ever seen? Is it Heartbreak Hill with Clint Eastwood? Is that the name of the? Is
Oh
it?
no. Yeah, probably just watching it with my dad. There's some Clint Eastwood movies I like that I know. That one doesn't come to mind, but I'm sure I've
Yeah,
seen it.
improvise, adapt, overcome is his quote.
Oh, I got to go back and watch that one. But
Yeah, I think I might have got the movie wrong, but that's what we're talking about this morning. And it doesn't have to be a tough discussion. I don't think it shouldn't break the bank either.
no,
I think
I
it's just
don't know if it's ego because maybe a little over a year ago I was either going to have the distribution company acquired or double down and scale it further. And we had talked about as hard as it is to find some brands that you can start your own. You can get somebody to come in, you start the brand concept, they're the figurehead. You get a contract brewery, you get your branding, your marketing, you hire a salesperson. And I know there's a lot more that goes into it at a high level, but in terms of an upstart to see if it has some legs to it, it's not that hard. And there is a lot of production space open right now to where you can do it for a pretty low investment. And especially
yeah.
if you own your own facility right now, if you're not trying to come up with brand concepts just to see what sticks. I
That's
mean,
interesting. That figure. I want to dive deeper in a conversation with you about the capacity that's available to brew and what the opportunity is. And then I got to believe there's a lot of warehouse space available too. And in terms of
yeah.
how you kind of piece together a model, to bring things to fruition. But yeah, I mean,
I mean, your
good
overhead's
point.
low. You're not paying rent. You're not paying, utilities or a mortgage or, um, I would, to me, it has vibes of the real estate bubble a little bit. And we've all seen the auctions, you get the emails, oh, there's brewery equipment up for auction. But, you know, I think that the contract production is a good route to go. But if almost half the brewing capacity in this country is sitting empty, at some point that's going to come to pass. And I've talked to a couple brands that, you know, they're in the shit with their debt service,
Yeah.
and it's just, I really hope it's not, but I could see at some point the industry just, the breweries are closing now, but within a 6 month span fall off a cliff in
Yeah.
terms of some of the mid-sized, small-sized craft breweries that just, they're trying to hold on right now. And to me, I don't know why you don't innovate while you're doing that, but if you're not going to do it now, it's clear that this
Or
this is the time.
yeah, and many, it's funny. Is look, I'm not going to pretend I understand their total journey, but I know here in Minnesota, a small little craft brewery actually closed down their operations, but they didn't close down the brand, and they actually took their brand and went into another craft brewery, and then that craft brewery is making their brand, right?
Yeah.
So that's one way that they adapt, to the market changing. Is there's a lot of craft breweries. Maybe you need to find a partner or come together, create some type of consortium, and then within that, they still have some cool brands that they can develop, and then they can start to innovate and come out with those options that the consumer is looking for. Or like you said, you can, another adapt. I talked about is another person. They adapted their contract brewing and their co-packing, and
Yeah.
that seems to be helping them as well. So there's not the playbook doesn't have to be come out with brands. A playbook could be, hey, how I can combine find like joint services, joint sales, different ways to go to the market to adapt as well. Because one thing for sure, with the tariffs coming,
Oh,
and kind of on subject, but these tariffs for imports and exports are not going to be good.
no, and I think that just goes to the general theme of not holding on and hoping that it just goes well. Whether it's starting new brands or sourcing products, ingredients from a different place,
Yeah,
or contract producing, whatever it is. If it's not working now, just pivot, because what's the worst that could happen? You're already in the shit,
yeah.
you know?
I mean, definitely. I don't even. I'm not going to pretend to know where all the goods and services and all the products and materials come from. But if they're not thinking about this, and we talk about adapt and improvise and these things you talked about, there's a lot of stuff coming. I'm certainly not a big believer in tariffs because the consumer ultimately pays for them. This is not a political ad here by no means, but there's we got to prepare for them, right? So I know in March whiskeys is going to go up like 50% for imports.
Yeah.
50%.
Yeah. I mean, just with that, whether it's like, where's the market going? Just try new things. I mean, there's the kettle sour or the hazy IPA. I was just thinking, like, there were days 5, 7 years ago where we'd go out on a crew drive when a brand was in, and I'd have 7 kettle sours in a night. And I don't even know how I went
Wow.
to bed. I mean, you're out for 7 hours. I'm not driving anything, but it's just a lot. And it just doesn't happen anymore. I mean, I love great beer, but I just don't do it anymore. So if you're a brewery that's still relying on it, consumer just doesn't exist like it used to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of variables and unknowns, and there's knowns. One thing we know for sure, the consumers change. We also know that Gen Z is looking for options. We also know everybody and their mom are looking for alternatives for depending on the occasion. And we know for a fact that these tariffs are coming. So I think the moral of our discussion this morning is prepare for it.
Yeah.
Don't just sit and wait. Go out there and do something. Hit go. Again, that's probably why I posted this thing on Warren Buffett: is invest in your business, right? Because it's going to cost you a little bit of money today, but over the course of time, if you play it right, the dividends are going to come back if you reinvest those in your business. So the $50,000 you put in to make the brand,
Yeah.
or the hospitality restaurant that actually changes their menu, they went from their customer count to 10 to 20 because they had things that the customer's looking for. Those things will add up over the course of time.
I don't. So I talked to Mike from Liquid Death on LinkedIn. We went back and forth a couple of
Yeah.
times. He says that they built a lot of early brand momentum in the on premise, and I believe that.
Yeah.
As far as Pittsburgh, I have not been out and seen many places that have liquid death in the on premise. I'm sure there are in other cities. I believe them. I think that's a great opportunity for you. Get it in a can. You can charge $4 for it, $5 for it at a nice restaurant. No one's going to bat an eye, and you're crushing profit. And you don't have to worry about someone starting a fight or getting in their car and hitting a fucking, stop sign or so. I don't know why more places don't have it, but for me, the restaurant, the hospitality, that's an easy pivot. It's not a lot of money reprinting a menu, and if you're a brand and you have your own production facility, you should be doing R&D batches of anything.
Oh yeah.
And
Well,
just
restaurants are starting to take like these mixers that behave as it can be a mocktail or it can be a mixer and a cocktail.
Yeah.
But they're starting because of efficiency and effectiveness, and actually the ingredients are better and safer. They're actually starting to pop cans behind the bar because the consistency and the quality of what the consumer is getting is much better versus the mixologist mixing it, putting their hands all over it. I mean, do you know by putting like your hand on a lemon, you never want to ever have a bartender ever touch a lemon and put it in your drink. Worst thing you could ever do.
Well, not only that, but some of the bartenders are short pouring. Some of them are pouring way too much and getting people wrecked. There's a brand, Dirty Pelican. I've talked to the guy on LinkedIn. That's what they're mixers, and you can either do an NA thing or mocktail, or you can do a cocktail.
Okay.
And he said it's now starting to get, people are starting to, bartenders, buyers are starting to get it and take off. But I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
As a bar owner, it would just take a lot of the stress off my mind. There's consistency built in.
Yeah.
And in terms of a brand doing R&D, if you've got your own production facility in any kind of tap room, you should be doing R&D batches nonstop and just let customers try it for free and get feedback. I talked to a brand yesterday who does it, and they give out like a little note card. They'll give you a free sample, and then they just want your feedback. What you like, what you didn't like. To me, that's great. Because
I love that. I work for a little company called Finnegan's here in Minnesota, and we actually talked about that. Actually have the little cards and get rather than doing a tasting panel, actually do the panel with your consumers right there and reward them for taking giving the information. Hey, will you take this survey, and for that you can get an extra pint tonight.
And the consumer loves it because they think, I saw it in action last night where they thought they were getting like a limited release. No one's ever tried it, which they are. Mm-hmm. So they're getting deeper engagement, and the bar or the brewery is getting customer feedback before they decide to go to market with a product. You've got your own production facility. If you've got some production space, why not?
Yeah, I love that. Or you can do you can get, I know Finnegan's invested in it. It's called a little it's like almost like a miniature brewery.
Yeah.
So you can actually make test batches and stuff. I think it's the best. And I hope they kept that. It was one of the best investments they could ever make, because then you could do little test batches, put them out in front of the consumer. Because we talked about this weeks ago, it really tied this, but we always said test it, build it, scale it, sell it, or keep it, right?
Yeah.
But to test it, this came up. I was going back and forth with a guy this morning on LinkedIn, but testing to see if you're actually giving the consumer what they want.
Yeah.
And that's one. And then two is another post. Someone said you should listen to what the consumer's telling you. Oftentimes we don't, right? And here's the post. This is really proper. I think I'm gonna get it right. So it was about a restaurant, and you know what Yelp is?
Yeah, yeah.
So this couple went to this restaurant, and they gave them a horrible rating on Yelp.
Okay.
Horrible rating. So you know what restaurants often do? They never call the consumer. They don't call.
Okay.
This restaurant actually called the consumer, asked them to come in, offered them a free meal, and they took their feedback.
A lot of people, I don't want to say they don't want to hear it, but that's hard to do, to be able to hear that feedback and say, because you're just inviting someone to say, here are the things that I don't like about something that you created.
Yeah. But you could be, insert supplier, insert restaurant. Hey, consumers, because all of them have followers and clubs and everything else, some type of loyalist. Hey, I want to hear from you. What would you like to see from us next year?
Yeah. The best brands always send us like that feedback at the end of the year. They send us a survey. What can we do better? But in terms of new product development, I mean, you could create anything. There was, a hard lemonade, a hard tea. Just do I've seen breweries that have those they're almost like home brew batches. You can brew a keg or two, get people's feedback, find one that they love, and send it out into the market. I mean, it's hard work, but it's not complicated.
No, Not at all. Well, Shane, I know we were late this morning getting started. I always ask you this question at the end is, what three things would you leave with everybody here based on what we talked about this morning? So we were talking about your post about you really have to adapt or die
Yeah.
in the market today. So what three things of advice would you leave everybody in the discussion this morning, your thoughts?
If it's worked 5 years ago, it doesn't mean it's going to continue to work. That's one. I would say continuous R&D, just continuously, even if you're at a contract production facility, just continually do small batches and get consumer feedback. And I say this a lot, but just put your ego aside, because,
Yeah.
I think the ego comes from, like, when you start a business, you're convinced that you're what makes this business special, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm such a great brewer. I'm such a great creative innovator. I think if you can put that aside and just say that, just put that aside. I mean, it's hard. We all go through it, but that can be incredibly powerful to me, because it allows you to then say, maybe I do brew really great lagers, but we should do a hard lemonade with electrolytes because that's what the consumer wants. And I'd
Yeah.
rather be successful than go down with an ego.
Yeah, I love that, Shane. For me, I would just say invest in yourself and your business.
Yeah.
Don't be scared to spend some dollars today, because over the course of time, just like Warren Buffett said, $114 turned into 400,000. And he said, over the course of time, there was a lot of people scared and things were crashing and burning. But if you know the market and you understand your leading indicators, you can meet your moment and grow your business. And you said it, you got to test it. You got to put the egos aside for sure. And you got to have R&D. What's that?
It's like you said, you don't have to invest a ton. It could be $1,000 a month in R&D. And when you find it hits, you invest 20, 40, 50 grand to start the brand. And you could end up like a Fat Tire or a New Belgium, where they started with Fat Tire. And now they've got a brand that's much bigger than that because they innovated, and it's flavor-based juiced malt stuff.
That's really important. What you just said is it could be $1,000 a month. It could be $100 a month. It could be whatever it is, but you don't have to spend $1 million to do this thing. It's my old Kaizen principles. Just do small steps and make those small changes over the course of the year. Maybe you spent $20,000, but it wasn't $20,000 in one, shot, and you're able to test it along. I lose you? Hey,
no,
make sure
you're there. I don't know where you went.
All right.
But
well, look.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, I wish everybody a happy Saturday. I'm headed to Penn State. Gophers, go Gophers. Sorry, Shane.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah. What are you doing today?
Low key. College football season's almost over. I got to go to one more game before the end of the year, but low key day today.
All right, great. Well, I'm wishing everybody a great Saturday, and until next week.
Appreciate it.
Did you lose me for a second on the end there?
Like a second, but oh well.